Hi, welcome to Hidden Gems. This is Arden Thomas, Cincom Smalltalk Product Manager. Hidden Gems is where we show you capabilities of the product that may not be obvious, but we want you to know about them. So this month's screencast, we're going to talk about working with lists, domain master, and a whole bunch of various tips. We're going to build an application and touch on a large number of things that we've covered in the past and some new techniques and tweaks. So we'll be talking about things like tags, security calls, screen scraping information from a URL, multi-selection lists, union for collections, an interesting object called void, and the use of lineGrid. So any questions, comments, or suggestions you have, please send them to me at athomas@cincom.com. So let's get started. Let's talk about tags. We want to tag our domain object, our stocks. So in financial security, the superclass of stock, I add an instance variable called tag and some API. So I can tag it. We keep it as an array, convert it to an ordered collection if we want to add something. I can get my tags, remove tags, add a number, and remove a number. So that's my API. Now, how are we going to use that? Well, in my loading of stocks right here, here's all the things from the New York Stock Exchange. So we tag each one New York Stock Exchange, likewise with American Exchange and over the counter right here. But I wanted more. I wanted to get if we got information for the Dow Jones Industrial Average symbols, that we would tag each one of those right here. And to get that information, we use a secure HTTP call from this website right here. So we can see that information right here. Here's the website, the Dow 30 or Dow Jones Industrial Average, and we can see the symbols right here. We can also get the NASDAQ 100 or NDX as it's known, and the IQ 100. These are all different types of indexes. And we'll get those and we'll screen scrape this. And so here's how we do the Dow Jones Industrial Average symbols. Now, if you need to negotiate the security encryption that's used, here's how you modify that to specify which ones you want to use first. Usually you don't have to do this, but if you do, this is how it's done. For example, if they use an encryption that you don't have, you might want to specify which ones that you do have to try first. Here's also, we've covered in the past, if you have an unknown certificate, here's how to add it. And then finally, we parse that data to get each symbol, and we've covered parsing extensively in the past. So next, I created an application that can display, let's see, my tag counts. I created a tag set object that has essentially the name of the tag and what symbols have that tag. And you can see I have them right here is where they're used. And how is this first initialized? Let me show you the application here first. Let's edit this. This is a data set. We use the standard list manager for the domain master framework. We have two columns, my tag name, my tag size. And an important thing to note, since we want multiple selections, is in details, make sure to select multiple selections. Otherwise, you'll have some issues if you subclass off of domain multi-list master. And if we start this up, we see the tag and how many there are of that tag. Next, I want to see what tags I have and how they overlap with other groups. So I use two instances of tag size app for this app. Let's open this up. I have two instances, but when I select something here, it shows me how many of these overlap. So I can see, for example, of the Dow Jones Industrial Average 30 symbols, which one of those occur in these other sets. And I partly get that union with the intersect here, this intersect, which I added to collection. which what it does is it finds all the things in common in those two collections and return it. So that's the set union. In set theory, it's the set union or intersection of the two collection sets. But recall, we also made this multi-selection. So what does that mean I can do? Well, I can select something and then select another. And what this shows me is how many are in all the things that I have selected. So let's make a better choice. We'll make this and maybe IQ 100 and maybe Dow Jones Industrial Average. So we can see that there are 18 in common in these three that are selected, 18 in common. Well, which ones are in common? So we created another application which also has a list of which ones are in common. Let's fire that up. So if I look at this, I can see which stocks are in this, which are in the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And of course, now if I want to multi-select several, I can see which ones overlap. No intersection there. Let's undo that. Let's unselect this and select this. None. Okay, you get the idea. So you can multi-select and see which are in common. And of course, all of this takes very little code by using our domain master. So let's look at the initializes, which is how this thing is put together. So we have two tag size apps and a stock list app. We make the stock list app an empty list to start off with, which is what we want. We have the size holder. This is the domain for the size holder. 0 is value. And we say, if you click on this list right here, I want you to compute calculate overlap. Let's look at calculate overlap. We find out which are our overlapping symbols. We figure out which ones for each the subset here, which is what this code does. And then finally, we get the stocks for those symbols and we add them to the stock list. That's basically it. Those two methods is the brunt of all of this. My calculation right here and my initial setup. So once you have a number of applications and you use this framework, it makes it largely plug and play like plugging together Tinker Toy objects, which is the goal for using this, to make it simple and easy to reuse applications. A couple last things to discuss. There's a really interesting object called void. I'll show you where I use it here. In loading Dow Jones transport symbols, I found one of the symbols was not in my stock dictionary. So the code ran into an error. Now I could write more code to get around that issue, but here's an interesting technique using void. Void is like nil, except if you send messages to it, it does nothing. It doesn't come up with an error. It just silently absorbs those messages. So you can use it like nil. If you ask it, is it nil? It'll respond true. It'll also respond true to is void, but it'll silently absorb things. So if I had nil and I tried to tag it, I got my error. However, if I use void and tag it, it does nothing. It just ignores that issue. So where might you want to use void? You can use void if it simplifies your coding and appropriately deals with the errors. Okay, where can you find void? You can find void in the value interface framework. Value interface was the inspiration for domain master. So you can find value interface in the public repository. So void is an interesting thing. I think it's good to have in your toolbox if you have a great situation where you can use it. Lastly, lineGrid. I use different fonts in this list, and at first the fonts had large spacing in between here. So to work with that better, post build with, always call super first, get your list manager widget, and set the line grid so you can experiment with what works best and tighten up your list. So there it is, a whole number of techniques and things that we tried and worked with for this application. I hope you got something out of this. Any questions, suggestions, comments, you want the code, please contact me at athomas@cincom.com. Until next time, have a great time with Smalltalk.